This video is on early childhood lesson planning. It's part 3, how we develop the learning activities and use the gradual release of responsibility model. First thing in planning your learning activities, because we're working with young children, we need to make sure our learning activities are developmentally appropriate, that they are interdisciplinary, because that's the way young children learn. They don't learn science separate from reading, separate from writing, separate from math. They learn things all in combinations and through interacting in many different ways. And of course, we need to have active learning. In other words, there has to be hands-on, developmentally appropriate, interdisciplinary, active learning. We also want to plan our learning activities to use the gradual release of responsibility. You might have heard this called I do, we do, and you do. This is the way we learn most things. Like when you learn how to drive, first you watch somebody else drive, and then you have this time period where you have to have a licensed driver in the car with you helping you, and then you can do it independently on your own. So all learning happens in this format. So we're going to use modeling, guided practice, and independent practice to create that I do, we do, you do model of learning. So the first thing in your lesson is your anticipatory set and review. So when you want to get started, you have to get the children interested in the activity. So the first thing you're going to do is to have some kind of a hook that gets them excited about it. And then you're going to link what you're going to learn today to what they've already learned. We know that all learning has to build on what kids know already. So make that link very clear. Remember when yesterday we learned about the setting? Well, now we're going to learn who lives in the book, who lives in that setting. Always link to what they have already learned. After you've gotten the kids excited about the lesson, then you move into phase 2, which is the modeling. And you want to directly teach the students the literacy skill that's in your objective. It's helpful if you say, today I will teach you to blank and put in that literacy skill. Now, why are we being so direct in our teaching here? Well, because literacy is social knowledge and it must be modeled and taught directly to the children. It's different than science that you can learn through discovery or math that children can construct on their own. Literacy must be learned from other people, and the literacy strategies research shows us are best when they're taught directly and we model them for the students so that they can see how we use the literacy strategies, and then they're going to try it out on their own. So for example, you could say, today I will teach you how to identify the main character in a story. The main character is the most important person or animal in the story. She does most of the actions. In our story, Goldilocks is the main character. Let's see how many things she does. So notice I'm not asking the kids, oh, who can tell me who the main character is? Instead, I'm directly teaching it to them. I'm modeling for them how to do it. This can be done in a whole group setting, or it could be done in small group, such as guided reading or in preschool during the small group time. A note about the interdisciplinary focus of your lessons. During modeling, we also want to teach the children how reading and writing are connected to other things that we learn. And you want to make those direct connections clear. So you might say something like, today we're going to write about animals. We can learn more about science, like animals, by reading and then teach others what we've learned by writing about what we learned. So we can connect science and writing, or science and reading. Or you might say, today we're going to use art to help us learn about the main character. We use illustrations in books to help us learn more about the characters. See how this illustrator used art to show us what Goldilocks looked like? So art and reading are connected. Or today we're going to use reading to learn more about social studies. We've been learning a lot about where we live, and I'm going to teach you how to use the table of contents to find information about the Statue of Liberty in our book. The Statue of Liberty is close to where we live, and we're going to use reading to help us learn more about social studies. Then we can move on to guided practice and feedback. So in guided practice, the students are going to then work on that objective with your support. So you might say, all right, let's read our story together and see if you can identify the main character. You would use a different story, right? So the first part, you model for them how to identify the main character of a story they've read already. And now you read a different story and see if they can identify the main character with your support. So you might say things like, oh, let's look for who does most of the action in this book and who's most important. This is the time that you can give feedback to students to help them learn or elicit more information from them. Guided practice, again, can be in whole group or small groups, such as a guided reading group. And then if phase 4, students are going to move into independent practice. And this is where they carry out the formal assessment. So you'd say, now it's your turn to identify the main character. Draw a picture of the main character and include 3 details that show what the character looks like. And again, this can be done in whole group or small group. So that's the overall structure of your lesson, those 4 parts. You get the kids interested in it, then you do the modeling, which is the I do, you do the guided practice and feedback, and then you do the independent practice where they're working on their own.